Okay. Chapter 9 is about hypothesis testing. You'll see later that the process is very similar to the interpretation pala, or the goal is very similar to what we were doing in chapter 7. It's just that in chapter 8, we made it simpler. Okay? Ginawa natin siyang step by step yung the process that we were using in chapter 7. So it's just a very simplified version of chapter 7. Okay? So the logic is still in there somewhere. Okay? It was just made simpler, made clear rules in making certain kinds of conclusions, but all the logic, all the concept comes from the concepts discussed from chapter 7. Okay? So chapter 9 again is just a simplified version of chapter 7 of making inferences about the populations. But specifically chapter 9 is single population hypothesis testing. If you check your textbooks, chapter 9 is about one population or single population hypothesis testing, wherein we are making inferences about just one population only. Okay? Like the average of this population or the proportion of the population. While in chapter 10, it's slightly different. In chapter 10, that's two population hypothesis testing. So we are making comparisons about two populations. Like comparing the average of population 1 to the average of population 2. Given that your data just comes from samples of the two populations. Kunwari, you are comparing average sleep time of Ateneo students and students of UP. So you randomly select students from Ateneo and randomly select students from UP. Then, if you want to make a comparison between the two populations, kahit from samples lang yung data, you can make that comparison using two population hypothesis testing. So again, chapter 9 is just for one population. So making conclusions muna for just one population. And before we proceed to the actual process, we will discuss the necessary concepts first, or the necessary terms, so that once we start with the process, it becomes simpler. Okay, you won't get confused whenever we encounter a certain term. Now, the first thing you have to know about hypothesis testing is that whenever we perform it, there are two kinds of hypotheses. The first one is called the null hypothesis. That's denoted by capital letter H with the subscript 0. Okay? So H with the subscript 0. This is sometimes read in different textbooks as H0, H0, or more commonly, especially in European countries, they call this H0. N-A-U-G-H-T, H0. Okay? So that's the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is an equation, it's a mathematical equation, and it's the basic proposition being tested. In general, the null hypothesis is a mathematical representation of the status quo. This is what we currently know. Okay? That's the null hypothesis. This is currently accepted. Ito yung what is currently being accepted. This is what we currently know. The alternative, or the research hypothesis, on the other hand, is denoted by capital H, but the subscript is small letter a. Our textbook uses capital H with the subscript of small letter a, but in other references, instead of small letter a, the subscript is 1. Okay? So you have H0 and then you have H1. Or for our textbook, it's H8. So the alternative hypothesis is again a mathematical equation that shows us the goal of the hypothesis test. This is what we want to test. This is what the evidence is trying to suggest, and this is what we want to know if it applies for the entire population. Okay? So normally, we start with the alternative hypothesis. This is what we want to test. This is what we want to know. And then, from the alternative hypothesis, we can construct the null hypothesis. That's just the opposite. Okay? So contradicting yung dalawa, you want to know which one of the two is more logical to believe in, if it's the null or if it's the alternative. Okay? So we have this example, the trash bag case. We were not able to answer the example from chapter 8, but it was mentioned in chapter 8. Now, the trash bag case, the story here is that there is a company that manufactures trash bags. Now, they want to know if their trash bag is the strongest in the market. Okay? They want to know if their trash bag can carry the heaviest weight compared to the other trash bags produced in the market. And for them to show that their trash bag is the strongest, they have to show that their trash bags can carry more than 50 pounds. Okay? On average, all other trash bags in the market break when the weight is 50 pounds. Now, for you to say that your trash bag is the strongest, then you have to show that your mean breaking strength is more than 50 pounds. Your trash bags can carry more than 50 pounds. Okay? Now, in order for them to do that, again, ideally, perform a census, get data from all the trash bags, and then compute for the average. But for this case, instead of performing a census, they just got a sample of 40 trash bags, and the average that they got from the sample was 50.575 pounds. Okay? And here we assume a value for sigma, which is 1.65. So in this problem, okay, let's set up the null and the alternative hypotheses. Okay? What is your evidence trying to suggest in this problem? Your evidence is the sample mean, and the sample mean is 50.575. What is that trying to say regarding the value for the entire population? Compared to 50, your sample mean is bigger. So this is trying to suggest that the average for all of your trash bags is greater than 50. That is your alternative hypothesis. And we just have to write that in equation form. And in that case, that's just mu greater than 50. We want to test if the average breaking strength for all the trash bags produced by the company is greater than 50 pounds. Okay? Now, the null hypothesis is just the opposite. Okay? Our textbook uses just the opposite sign. So it's the same values and the same parameter. It's also mu. However, they just replace that with less than or equal to. Okay? Just the opposite sign. And then this is also 50 pounds. So currently, we don't know if the average for our trash bag is greater. So our assumption is that our average is less than or equal to 50. It's similar to the industry average. Now, our sample suggests that our trash bag is stronger. So that's what we want to test. That's why we put this in the alternative hypothesis. Okay? In other references, instead of less than or equal to, they use just an equal sign. Mu is equal to 50 pounds. Okay? So any of these two equations can be accepted for the null hypothesis. Okay? Our own textbook just uses this, may less than or equal to, but for other references online or other textbooks, their null hypothesis is just an equal sign. Okay? Walang less than or greater than. It's just an equal sign. And it's actually patterned after chapter 7. Right? Remember chapter 7, ano yung first step whenever making conclusions? You assume a value for mu. Okay? It's similar to this one. Okay? So you can use this or this form when setting up hypotheses. Okay? But for the alternative, there's just one way for you to show that. Yes?
For like a null hypothesis in certain problems, are there any problems that they give the null hypothesis?
Yes.
Or is it always just, okay.
For some problems, it might be given. In most problems, it's not. So you have to set up your hypothesis based on the problem. Normally, your clue is the sample size. Okay? Compare that to a target value if it's bigger or if it's lower, that will be your basis for the sign in the alternative. Okay? Let's have another example. So in the payment time case, so again, company implemented a new billing system. They want to know if the payment time of the customers will now be reduced to less than 19.5 days. Okay? In the past, in the old system, the average was more than 19.5. Now with the new system, they want to know if their customers are now paying earlier. Okay? And why are they trying to show this? Because from their sample of 65 payment times, the average payment time that they obtained was 18.11. So again, what is your sample mean trying to suggest? It's 18.11, it's lower than 19.5. So your sample is trying to suggest that the average payment time for all the customers is now less than 19.5. So that's what your sample is trying to suggest. Therefore, that should be your alternative hypothesis. And how do we write that in equation form? That's also mu, but what will now be the sign? It's less than 19.5 days. Okay? And for the null, again, there are two ways. Either mu is equal to or mu is less than or equal to 19.5 days. Okay? Any questions here? Sorry, greater than. Opposite sign. Correct. Dapat opposite. Okay? So equal sign is always placed in the null hypothesis. Questions here? Finally, you have the Valentine's Day case. A candy company markets a special 18-ounce box of assorted chocolates. This year, they made an extra special box. Last year, the average number of boxes sold for all the stores was 300. So when they computed for the average number of boxes sold for all the stores, they got 300. Now, they are projecting a 10% increase. Okay? So if last year's sales on average was 300, now they're expecting a 10% increase, or they're expecting an average of 330. Okay? Now, they want to know if they should prepare for a 10% increase or not. Okay? It doesn't say if you should prepare for at least 10% or less than 10%. They just want to know if they should prepare for exactly 10%. Okay? Pwede rin naman kasi, aside from this, they can also test if they should prepare for a 20% increase or a 5% increase. Here, they specifically want to know if they should prepare for exactly 10%. Okay? Now, in this case, the average that they obtained from the sample was 326. From the different stores, the average was 326. So, what is this trying to suggest? Is the average a 10% increase or not? No. Because 326 is not a 10% increase from 300. Okay? So, our sample is trying to suggest that the average for all the stores is not 330. So, mathematically, we write that as mu not equal to 330 boxes. Okay? So, it includes both sides. The actual average can be lower than 330 or it can be higher than 330. But for this case, we're just interested to know if they should prepare for 10% or not. So, we will just use not equal to. And for the null hypothesis, there's just one way to write that. That's mu equal to 330 boxes. Okay? So again, we always use the equal sign at the null hypothesis. And for this case, it also makes sense. It still makes sense. Kasi nga, the sample itself is not 330. Okay? Our sample suggests this, that the mean is not 330. Okay? So we have here three different kinds of cases, and as you can see here, there are three different kinds of sets of hypotheses. In fact, there are terms for these types or for these sets. For the first set, we call these as one-sided greater than alternative. Okay, so the type of hypothesis is one-sided greater than. Okay, why? Because your alternative hypothesis uses a greater than sign. So we call this one-sided greater than. The second example is called one-sided less than because HA uses less than. And then finally, the last case uses follows a two-sided not equal to alternative. We call this two-sided not equal to because again our alternative hypothesis uses not equal to. Okay? So aside from knowing how to call these types of hypotheses, later on you'll see how important it is for you to know the type because the type will dictate the process later. If you have a one-sided greater than, the process will be slightly different from the hypothesis test for a one-sided less than and for a two-sided not equal to alternative. For one type, you have to get the area to the right. For another type, an area to the left, and so on. Okay? So you really have to see the difference or the distinction between these three types. Okay? Now, aside from knowing how to set the hypotheses and how to call the hypotheses that you constructed, you also have to know the decisions that you can make whenever we perform hypothesis tests. Okay? Now, every time we perform hypothesis testing, we are limited to just two decisions. If your decision is not any of these two, that's automatically incorrect. Okay? Every time we perform hypothesis testing worldwide, okay, there are only two acceptable decisions. Either you reject the null hypothesis or you do not reject the null hypothesis. Okay? First, when do we not reject the null hypothesis? We do not reject the null hypothesis if after your computations later, you'll see that there is not enough evidence to support the alternative hypothesis. Let's say after making computations, we found out that our sample mean is not enough to show this. Although your sample mean is greater than 50, it's not enough for us to say that the average is really greater than 50 for the entire population. So in that case, your decision should be, do not reject the null hypothesis. Do not reject this. Okay? Why do we use that instead of another statement? Some of you might think that the statement, do not reject the null hypothesis, is the same as accepting the null hypothesis, right? Halos pareho lang. But they're very different whenever we perform hypothesis testing because when we say that we are accepting the null hypothesis, it's like saying that we are sure that this is correct. Okay? We are sure that our null hypothesis is correct. We are 100% sure that this is the correct statement. Okay? That's the implication when you say that you're accepting the null hypothesis. Now, it's safer to use the statement, do not reject the null hypothesis. Why? Because when we say that we are not rejecting this, we are saying that we don't have enough evidence to support this. Okay? So, we will stick to what we currently know. It's possible for the mean to be really greater than 50. It's just that we don't have enough evidence to show it. Okay? To prove it. Okay? That's why we use this instead of this one. This is safer. We are accepting or we are saying that yes, it's possible for the mean to still be greater than 50. It's just that we don't have enough evidence to support it. So we will stick to our original statement. Okay? That's why we use this because this is safer as compared to this one. Now, the next decision is reject the null hypothesis. And we reject the null hypothesis if after performing computations, we found out that we have sufficient evidence to support this. Okay? We can really conclude that the average for the entire population is greater than 50 pounds. Okay? Now, we use this statement, reject the null, instead of accepting the alternative because of similar implications. Again, if we say that we are accepting this, it's like saying that we are 100% sure that the mean is greater than 50. We are sure that our trash bag is the strongest. But when we say that we are only rejecting the null hypothesis, it's possible for the mean to still be less than 50. However, our evidence says otherwise. Our evidence is sufficient for us to conclude this. Okay? So we are not saying with certainty when we use these two decisions. That's why we stick to these two statements and not these two. Okay? So later on, you'll see that in the hypothesis testing process, there are 7 steps. The 6th step is making a decision. And in step 6, your answer should be either reject or do not reject the null hypothesis. Again, if your answer is something else, it's automatically incorrect. Okay, we want to stick to the safest statement or safest possible decision. Okay? Any questions here for the two statements? Now, how do we know if your evidence is sufficient or not? But we mentioned earlier, if your evidence is not sufficient, we do not reject. But if your evidence is sufficient, we reject. But how do we know if your evidence is sufficient or not? That's based on the test statistic, which is actually based on 2 methods. Later on, we will discuss 2 different methods in performing hypothesis tests. We have the critical value method and we have the p-value method. Both methods have different ways of determining if your evidence is sufficient or not. And don't worry, the rules here are very clear. Okay, hindi siya subjective. There is a very clear way to determine if your evidence is sufficient or not. Okay, depending on the method that is performed. So we will discuss these two in more detail once we start with the process. Okay? So again, we are sticking to either reject or do not reject, okay, and not any other decision because we want to make the safest possible conclusion. Okay? Now, why do we want to be conservative? Why do we want to be safe with our conclusions? Right? But you can always make a guess. It's either your guess is correct or not. But why do we want to make our conclusions as conservative, as safe as possible? Because we don't want to commit errors. Okay? So remember, we've talked about this in chapter 7. In chapter 7, we computed for a probability and we compare that to what actually happened, right? If the probability is too small, yet in reality we actually got the sample mean, again, the expectation did not happen kasi we expect that we will not get that average because the probability is too small, yet it happened. And again, what was our conclusion in those cases? There's a contradiction, so the assumption must be incorrect. Okay? So, we want to make safer conclusions and safer assumptions because we want to avoid this, where your expectation will be different from reality. Okay? And again, we want to make conservative conclusions because we want to avoid committing errors. Okay? And what are errors? Errors can be believing something that turns out to be incorrect, okay? Or saying something that turns out to be incorrect. So we want to avoid making those errors. That's why we make our conclusions as safe, as conservative as possible. Okay? Because we know that masakit if you commit an error. Now, whenever we perform hypothesis testing, there are actually 2 types. Okay? Whenever we perform inferential stat, there are always 2 possible errors that we can commit. The first one is called the type 1 error. And the type 1 error occurs when we reject this, yet this is true. Okay? Let's say after performing computations, your decision is that we are rejecting the null hypothesis. Okay? Now, the type 1 error occurs if you reject this. Your decision is that we are rejecting the null hypothesis, yet in reality, this is correct. Okay? The mean is less than 50 pounds. That's what we call the type 1 error. And we represent the probability of committing a type 1 error using the Greek letter alpha. In fact, it's the same alpha from chapter 8. Remember alpha from chapter 8? How do we interpret alpha? Let's say your confidence level is 95%, alpha is 5%, right? Ano yung 5%? How did we interpret 5% before? That's the probability that your confidence interval does not contain the parameter, right? That's the type 1 error. You concluded that the population mean or the population proportion should be inside this, okay? Pero if the actual mean is not inside, then that's a type 1 error, okay? So again, type 1 error, the probability of committing a type 1 error is represented by alpha. Now, the second type of error is type 2. Okay? And type 2 occurs if you do not reject the null hypothesis when this is false. Let's say after performing computations, your decision is that we will not reject the null hypothesis. We do not reject this because we don't have sufficient evidence to support this. Yet, in reality, this is false. Okay? Ito yung tama. So when you make that kind of conclusion, we call that the type 2 error. And the probability of committing a type 2 error is represented by the Greek letter beta. Okay? So, again, alpha is the probability of committing a type 1 error, and beta is the probability of committing a type 2 error. So again, here is a matrix that shows us when those errors happen. We commit a type 1 error if you reject the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is true. Now, a type 2 error occurs when we do not reject the null hypothesis, yet the null hypothesis is false. Okay? Or in simpler terms, okay, here's a common example of type 1 and type 2 error. A type 1 error occurs when we make a conclusion that turns out to be incorrect. We say that a man is pregnant when in reality the person was actually not pregnant. That's a type 1 error. Okay? How is it different from a type 2 error? A type 2 error happens when we don't conclude, okay, something, yet yun pala talaga yung currently what's happening. Here, a type 2 error occurs when we say that a lady is not pregnant when in reality, the lady is pregnant. Okay? So again, type 1 is false positive. We say something positive, positive ibig sabihin, we make a certain conclusion, okay, and apparently it's not correct. And then type 2 is when we don't say something, we don't conclude something, and in reality, tama pala dapat siya. Okay? Tama yung statement na yun. Now, in the trash bag case example, what are the type 1 and type 2 errors? A type 1 error occurs when we conclude that the mean is greater than 50, when in reality, it's less than 50. Or, we conclude that your trash bag is the strongest, when in reality, it's not. Okay? You advertise in your the TV or online that your trash bag is the strongest, but in reality, it's not the strongest. There are other trash bags that are stronger than yours. That's type 1. How about type 2? In type 2, we will not conclude that our trash bag is the strongest, but in reality, strongest na pala. Okay? Our trash bag is the strongest, yet we just don't make that conclusion. Okay? Because we don't have enough evidence to support it. Okay? So again, a type 2 error occurs when we don't conclude that our trash bag is the strongest when it's really the strongest in the market. Okay? So between these two, what do you think is more acceptable? Ano yung mas okay for us to commit? Type 1 or type 2? Parang mas okay to commit type 2 instead of type 1. Right? Kasi in type 2, anong nangyari? Parang sayang lang. Okay? We could have made this statement. Okay? It's just that you were too conservative. We did not make this statement. We can see that we have the strongest trash bag, yet we did not make that claim. Sayang yun. Because if your trash bag is really the strongest, then that's your unique selling proposition. Okay? You can actually advertise that. But, what happens in a type 1 error? Baliktad. Parang sobra-sobra kang nag-conclude. You concluded that your trash bag is the strongest, when in reality, it's not. So, ano yung possible consequences whenever you commit a type 1 error? First, you might be considered as liars if you're not telling the truth. Pwede kayong sampahan ng kaso, okay, a lawsuit, because you are making false advertisements. You can lose the trust of your customers kasi nga, again, you're not telling the truth. You might, it might result to loss in profits and so on. So, when comparing the effects or the consequences between type 1 and type 2, parang mas acceptable yung type 2. Parang we just missed an opportunity because we are being very safe. We wanted to be very safe. Unlike in type 1, nasobrahan ka sa pag-conclude, okay? And it turns out to be incorrect. Okay? Type 1 error is more commonly known as hasty generalization. Okay? You made this conclusion, okay, sinabi mo kaagad, your trash bag is the strongest, kahit hindi naman pala. You concluded that the average payment time was reduced to less than 19.5, when in reality, your customers are still paying on average at least 19.5 days. Okay? So, in most cases, again, we prefer, it's better, it's more acceptable to commit type 2 than type 1. And it's actually integrated in how we, in the judiciary systems in different countries. Okay? You might have heard of this concept, yung Blackstone principle, where it says that it's better that 10 guilty men go free than that one innocent man be convicted. Okay? In this case, ano kaya yung null and ano yung alternative? What happens when you are in the court? Okay, let's say you have a suspect for murder. Okay, ano yung goal of the trial? For you to know if the person is guilty or not guilty. So, in that case, your alternative hypothesis is that the person is guilty because you have some evidence to support it. Kunwari, the person was seen in the scene of the crime. Parang ganun. That's your evidence. So, you're trying to show that the person or that the suspect is guilty. And then, the null hypothesis is that the person is not guilty. Okay? So, what is the type 1 error in this hypothesis? You conclude that the person is guilty when in reality, the person is innocent. Okay? Yun yung type 1. How about type 2? We conclude that we don't have enough evidence to see that the person is guilty. We don't see that the person is guilty, when in reality, the person is guilty. Okay? So, again, similar to our conclusion earlier, we said that we prefer type 2 instead of type 1 kasi mas acceptable yung type 2. And again, that's incorporated in this principle. It's better that 10 guilty men go free. Remember, that's your type 2 error. Mas okay na. 10 guilty men are set free instead of one innocent man being convicted. Okay? Parang it's better to commit type 2 instead of type 1. Okay? And that's again integrated in judiciary systems. And you might have seen this in different shows, different movies, how do you say if a person is convicted guilty or not? Dapat guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Okay? Very, very sure. Okay? Walang reasonable doubt that the person is guilty. If there is reasonable doubt, then the person is not considered guilty. Okay? Again, that's incorporated in this principle. You want to be safe, you want to avoid type 1 error as much as possible. That's why we are making very safe conclusions. Okay? Now, there's a trade-off between type 1 and type 2 errors. So, the higher the value for alpha, the lower the value for beta, or the higher the value for beta, the lower the value will be for alpha. We said that it seems more acceptable to commit type 2 instead of type 1. So, we'd rather have a very low value for alpha. Okay? Kasi nga, mas malaki yung consequences of committing type 1. That's why we set low values to alpha. That's why from chapter 8, remember, our alphas are usually 1% and 5% only. Okay? It's based in this principle. You want alpha to be as low as possible because you don't want to commit type 1 errors. Okay? Now, again, there's a trade-off between alpha and beta. They are not complementary because you know that the complement of alpha is the confidence level. Okay, they're not complementary, they just move in a certain direction. They're inversely proportional. As one increases, the other decreases. So okay na sa atin that our beta is slightly higher as long as we can keep our alphas lower. Okay? Any questions here? One last example for type 1 and type 2 errors. Let's say you've been getting signs that a certain person likes you. Okay? May evidence ka. Your evidence is that this person is giving you certain signs. Kunwari, the person texts you every day or sends you message, likes all of your posts, and so on. Okay? Kunwari, yun yung evidence. Okay? What is it trying to suggest? Those actions can be used as evidence to say that the person likes you. Okay? So what do you think will be the null and the alternative hypothesis in this scenario? Your evidence is that the person seems to like you. So ano kaya yung alternative? The person likes you and the null is a person does not like you. Okay? So again, your evidence suggests that the person likes you. That's why that's your alternative. And then your null is that the person does not like you. Okay? Now, again, to determine your decision, if you will reject or you will not reject the null hypothesis, again, you perform data collection. So you gather data, and then you perform your computation. And then let's say, after making a certain computations, you are now ready to make conclusions. Okay, either you reject or do not reject the null hypothesis. What do you think is the type 1 error in this scenario? Ano yung type 1 error? Concluding that the person likes you, but in reality, he or she does not. Okay, yun yung type 1. How about type 2? Pabebe. Diba? Pag too conservative. You're saying that baka hindi niya ako gusto. Okay? When in reality, the person likes you. Okay? So between the two, again, diba, mas acceptable yung type 2 instead of type 1. Mas masakit yung type 1 instead of type 2. Again, that's another reason why we want alpha to be as low as possible. Okay? So again, that's your type 1 and then that's your type 2 error. Now, what do you think will happen if your alpha is too high? Remember, alpha is the probability of committing a type 2 error. Ano ibig sabihin if alpha is too high? There's a big chance of committing a type 2 error. When does that happen? When does it happen na your alpha is too high? A high chance of committing a type 1 error. It means that in terms of the amount of evidence, konting evidence lang for you is enough for you to make that conclusion. to conclude that the person likes you. Okay, that happens if your alpha is too high. Kunwari, the person liked your profile picture, okay? If your alpha is too high, you might conclude already that the person likes you. Okay, that happens if your alpha is too high. Now, what happens if your alpha is too low? You require a lot of evidence before you make this conclusion. Okay, liking your profile picture is not enough. Okay, so if your alpha is too low, there's a very small chance of committing a type 1 error. So you require a lot of evidence. So hindi enough na nilike yung profile picture mo. Parang for you to make that conclusion, dapat the person also does other things. Okay? So again, that's another reason why we always set low values to alpha. We'd rather require a lot of evidence, kailangan beyond reasonable doubt, before making that conclusion, because we know that, again, there are grave consequences when we commit a type 1 error. Okay? Any questions here? So again, whenever we perform hypothesis testing, we might commit either type 1 or type 2. But we want alpha to be as low as possible because the effects are more grave. Okay? Now, we mentioned last time that our alphas are normally 1% and 5%, but our textbook suggests 4 values for alpha. So we will have a more comprehensive conclusion. Our alphas are either 10%, 5%, 1%, and 0.1%. Okay? So instead of 1 and 5%, we also test at 10% and 0.1%. Okay? So ano yung do these statements suggest? Okay? If you can reject the null hypothesis up to an alpha of 10%, it means that you have some evidence to make this conclusion. Okay? If you can reject the null hypothesis up to 5%, then your evidence is strong. Kasi 5% na lang yung chance of committing a type 1 error, yet you can still make that conclusion. It means that your evidence is strong. Now, if you can reject the null hypothesis up to 1%, then we can qualitatively say or subjectively say that your evidence is very strong. Because even if your alpha is very low, you're still able to make that conclusion. And then finally, if you can still reject your null hypothesis, even if your alpha is 0.001 only, then your evidence is extremely strong. So almost 99.9% confidence that your conclusion is correct. Okay? So later you'll see that whenever we perform hypothesis tests, we test at 4 values, 10, 5, 1, and 0.1 to have a comprehensive conclusion. Okay? Any questions here? So parang assigning lang a qualitative description to the amount of evidence we have based on our decisions. And then, to end the introduction to hypothesis test, I'll show you this one. I saw this online. What can you say about this? I hope your statistical alpha is really high, so you won't reject me. What happens again if your alpha is high? Higher chance of committing a type 1 error. Mas malaki yung chance that you will reject the null hypothesis. Does it make sense? Baliktad nga, di ba? A higher alpha means a higher chance of rejection. So, mali yung gumawa, in other words. Baliktad. Kapakawiti ka na lang, galingan mo na din. Okay, so that's the end of the introduction to hypothesis test. Later, you'll see the 7 steps. Okay, all of the concepts we discussed earlier are necessary in performing all these 7 steps. So here are the 7 steps in testing hypotheses. First, is to state the null and the alternative. So you have to state H naught and HA. Next is to specify the value for alpha. Again, we will use all the four: 10, 5, 1, and 0.1%. Step 3 is to determine the appropriate test. Similar to confidence intervals, there are various types of tests here. We have a z-test for means, a t-test for means, and a z-test for proportions. So similar to chapter 8, again, you have to be careful in selecting the test that should be used in a certain problem. Step 4 is to determine the rejection rule. So this is based on the method, either critical value or p-value method. Step 5 is the actual computation. Here you will see if your evidence is enough or if it's not enough. And in step 6, you will now make the decision. Do we reject or do we not reject the null hypothesis? And then finally, we will interpret the results. What does it mean if you reject the null hypothesis or if you do not reject the null hypothesis? So you will go back to the actual variable. Ano ba yung mean? What mean are you talking about? Okay, ano yung mu na to? Okay, so you have to make the interpretation back to the original problem. Okay? So we'll end here for a while. So we'll have a quick break. And then after this, you will continue with the actual process. Okay, we'll discuss the first type of test. Yan ko lang yung